And mic'd up. Guys, we've had a very interesting number of presentations today that spoke a lot about trends within the manufacturing sector. Would maybe we just pass it out and see what in your industry do you see are the trends that are emerging, and maybe just to kick it off, you might just do a 30-second introduction of who you are for those who weren't in that session earlier. Aidan, we kick it off with you.
Okay, we're on.
You're on. 6. 1, 2, 1, 2.
We do now.
So give us a 30-second tour.
Sure. My name is Aidan Corcoran. I'm the founder and CEO of Horizon Group. 4 or 5 years ago, we provide a system which is very rigidly hierarchical, but their apprenticeships are it's the best system I've probably seen, and it's very difficult for an engineering graduate to come into a factory and hit the shop floor and expected to fix problems. It's just there's a huge gap there. I've often felt sorry for them when I hired them myself and landed them down there. But the best manufacturing engineers in the main that I've worked with are those that have come through an apprenticeship system, had some further education and further development, and because they know the language, they can understand that equipment far better than the graduate engineer. Of course, it's a role for the graduate engineer, especially in the more high-tech industries. But we absolutely do not produce enough apprenticeships. It's almost criminal in how we did not invest in it.
Dennis, I saw you nodding there. What's your own thoughts on that?
I'd echo what Liam was saying there. I think today, going through the Dáil is the bill for converting the ITs into technological universities. As far as I know, it's happening this week. And I think we need different institutions to produce different types of graduates. And I think the Institutes of Technology have been very good at producing people with a more practical approach, people who can maybe fit more vocationally, who can fit into a company or a workforce more quickly than maybe people from some of the universities who might be a little bit more academic. And I just hope that the technological universities don't go too much down the road of becoming universities. I think they need to enhance the practical skills. Apprenticeships are at one level, I think, but you need people coming out of a third level education who can fit into the workforce quickly. And I think the Institutes of Technologies, or the technological universities, as they're likely to be called, have a key role to play in that.
A great role, and because you're in HR, and obviously one of your key roles within your own department is attracting the right talent and trying to retain it. Are you finding it difficult to source staff, and how do you see that being resolved? Is that by education, or is that by retraining, or is that by us importing workers with skills and languages to help fill that gap, or how do you see that being addressed?
Yeah, it's a combination of all three, actually. So what we see at the moment within industry is that there is an abundance of graduates. So when we advertise roles actually at the engineering level, there is an abundance of graduate applications that we'll get. And I suppose just to clarify for the panel, I think it's right. In Boston Scientific, we'd have a graduate program which is very much based on development. We don't expect a graduate to come in and hit the floor running. So our graduate program would be 23 months long. They come in and do 3 8-month rotations across production, quality, engineering. So I think we continue in that. In terms of attracting more experienced talent, what we're seeing within the industry at the moment is, especially at the manufacturing engineer grade 2 level, so those at the 6 to 7 year experience, there seems to be a shortage there, and we're not sure whether those people actually left Ireland at the time when the recession hit, and whether they're in the likes of Australia, Canada, or other places around Europe. We have anecdotal evidence to say that they are, and one of the things that I suppose we need to look at from a national level is actually why people have left, why they're not coming back, and I suppose if we were to look at global initiatives or government initiatives, I think that we absolutely need to look at the personal taxation system within Ireland in terms of attracting people back to Ireland. And we also we need to look at providing incentives as well for importing specialist skill into Ireland and maintaining our employee permit system, making it business friendly.
Yeah, because you saw that within the technology sector, where the likes of Sean O'Sullivan from SOS Ventures was working on trying to create permits for people to come in to fill those gaps within technology. Aidan, are you seeing any sense within your engineering design or recruitment and resourcing firm that you're seeing people returning to Ireland as yet, or are people still leaving, or as it steady?
Yeah, we would have reached out now to Europe, and we'd have reached back out to Australia. We would have possibly about 15 to 20% of our recruits over the last 2 years would have come back from abroad. There is that stage as well. Someone mentioned that where people go and travel as person. You leave in your mid-20s, come back in your early 30s, different stage of life. I think just going back to that, though, I gave a talk about 2 weeks ago in the local school on engineering and business. And, there was a great appetite and enthusiasm there for, at that level, going all the way back. And I agree very much on the apprenticeship thing. I came up myself through technician sergeant diploma. But going back to schools and having a love for science or the STEM programs and having a love for robotics, kids, the Coder Jojo's, is a great example of initiatives we could do to get a love for engineering, and we do have a deficiency from a science and engineering point of view. And if we're going to be a strong country, and we're going to have a strong R&D ethic, and we're going to be strong high-end manufacturing, we do need technical people at that level. 20 years ago, I was in college. 20 years' time, we need the next generation coming up, because I and most of my team will be going out the door at that stage. So.
Sure, because I heard one of the speakers talking from your own company earlier about the importance of generating an interest in science and maths and STEM subjects at an early age. And I guess the Coder Dojo model, although it's more informal, has travelled the world now because there's an appetite for it. And because I guess a lot of parents see there's a lot of opportunities for young people in those sectors of coding, and because it's now been made attractive for young people and relevant. I'm an engineering nerd. My wife is a mechanical engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer. Our child is probably a mechanical engineer. Our 3 children, but I'd love especially the girls, to get the opportunity to, my wife worked incredibly hard to become a first-class honours engineer, and now works in the company, etc., alongside myself. But she didn't get the opportunities that I did as a guy. She was one of the first people in our school to choose to do, or to force the school to let her do technical drawing. We need to be able to, create an environment that we balance the scales on that, and because there's a whole more workforce there that could enjoy what we've enjoyed. Dennis, maybe another question to you would be, so we heard Maria Gilledy talking this morning about the number of jobs that are created directly by manufacturing. I think she put the figure at 222,000, and double that when you take indirect employment. What do we need to do in Ireland now, or are we doing enough to attract a pipeline of foreign direct investment? Is there more that we could do?
I wouldn't claim that FDI is my area of expertise. I do know when we travel that we have an excellent reputation in most areas. Technology, for example, we're very well rated worldwide. Other technologies that I'm directly involved in, like traceability with food. So food has to be an industry we looked at as well. I know people don't generally look at it as manufacturing, but it is a form of manufacturing as well, in the same way as pharma, for example. So we have the reputation. I presume the only thing you can do is change the environment. I wouldn't claim to be an expert in it, but I presume the companies coming in, we have to suss out what they're looking for. Is it their tax environment? Everybody seems to think it is. Anecdotally, is it really? I don't know.
Rona, you would obviously, as a multinational, what's your own view in terms of, are we doing enough to attract, the next Boston Scientific or the next FDI or the startups, or where can we position ourselves to be more attractive to FDI companies? Why are they coming here, and why will they continue to come here, given that other countries are going to try and emulate our own success with the likes of the IDA?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a number of things. So if you look at US foreign direct investment, which is an example, so Boston Scientific being a US multinational, in 2014 Ireland became the largest recipient of US foreign direct investment really within Europe. Really. So I think it's a combination of a low corporation tax. Really. I think one of the things that we constantly get feedback is around talent, actually. So the US multinationals tell us that we have a highly talented education system, and it's the quality of our graduates that are actually coming out. I think what we really need to do is, so again, if I look at the profile of graduates actually coming out of, they have excellent technical ability. They have excellent technical ability, and with development they're able to hit the ground and they're able to hit running. There's a term that we use now called global citizenship. So, you know, we're becoming more globalized in everything that we do. So I think Ireland needs to, I suppose, prepare people with a global mindset. So not just operating within the Irish point of view, but having a global approach to that. I think we need a strategy around language development. We need a national language skills development in terms of positioning ourselves in order to be able to address that, especially as US multinational companies look to moving into the BRIC regions, the Brazils, the Russias, the Indias and the Chinas. So we definitely do that. We need more skills around collaboration, around innovation, that's already been mentioned, so more of the softer type skills. And we've focused an awful lot on our graduates, actually, those that are there. I think we also need to look at as well what we're doing for our current workforce. So if you look at our current workforce, actually those that are in there at the moment, there's an awful lot of downward pressure now at the moment towards those that are going to be hitting retirement age, actually within the coming years. So as organisations, we need to look at, are we adapting those roles for when those people go? And so the other things that we need to look at is, we need to look at, are there particular incentives that we can put in place as well in order to keep people or attract people to stay in the workplace beyond the normal retirement age.
Sure. And Dennis, your own sense, I mean, in terms of working with companies around Ireland, I mean, are you getting a sense that there's more that we could do if you had a magic wand and you could get a couple of wishes with regard to attracting more FDI into Ireland? What would that be, and what would you be recommending to do?
Well, I think, to be honest, on one hand, we're probably doing very well with FDI, and certainly relative to many other European countries. I think it's a matter of sustaining that investment, looking after the companies that are here, because I mean, I think probably one of the themes, manufacturing is mobile. We have a lot of manufacturing companies, but it's very easy for a corporation to decide, well, look, we're moving out of Ireland to somewhere else. So I think embedding the companies that are here even more and embedding them for the long term is to me the most important thing. I think all the points there that have been made around skills, around I think attracting, we definitely have a skills shortage in particular areas. We are a small country, there is only a limited supply chain, if you wish, in terms of young people, but attracting people back, I think there are, and I personally know my own son is in Australia and has been there for 4 or 5 years, and I was out there in December, and the number of young Irish people still out there working and doing quite well for themselves, and now a lot of them have a number of years experience under their belt. So I really think that that's an untapped resource, and I would absolutely agree that we should make it attractive. And there are practical things like even housing, which I know is a big national issue. But if people come back, they need to know that there is going to be housing there and that they're going to be able to afford to buy a house, and access to schools and all of that. Because the countries that they emigrated to, like Australia and Canada, have a very, very high standard of living. And to be honest, Ireland is competing with those countries to get people back. So I would certainly think that's part of it. I think the skills, the upskilling of people, again back to my own area of innovation. I think, I'm a scientist by training, we get, there is the scientific approach, but if you want to be innovative, you have to be teach people how to be creative as well, and like teaching innovation in science and engineering courses is something that I would be a big advocate of, because I think we need people with the hard skills and the logic and all of that, but on the other side you need people who can be creative and very good problem solvers. So they're just a few thoughts.
And Liam, lastly, just on that topic, is there anything in particular that you think we're missing in Ireland in terms of trying to either drive more FDI or to sustain it, given the competition that will come from other regions for that foreign direct investment?
I think I see some things at a more basic level, Sean. For example, there's an enormous amount of goodwill for us around the world, not just in the USA, but in Asia and across Europe. You know, an Irish bar in any city in the world, all the expats and locals will go there. Why? I don't know sometimes. And I go down myself and say, Jesus, you know, let's get out of here. Some of them are great, but they go there because there's just an enormous amount of goodwill. And when I lived in the USA, I was struck by the fact that so many people I knew and would give maps of me and recommendations for me, they'd go home, it would rain every day, and they'd come back and they'd say it was a marvellous holiday. Because somehow or other, it's almost as if there's a blockage in there to say, well, it was crap. It was great. Now, there's the recent development of these mergers for naked tax reasons worry me. I think that will can erode, has the potential to erode some of that goodwill. Hillary Clinton attacked it last night at the caucus meeting in Iowa, said it was disgraceful and they shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. Already, you know, Brussels has been sniping away at our corporation tax. That would worry me in the longer term. You know, the latest one is J&J and Tyco, is that right? I mean, they're doing that for naked tax benefits, and that's, I think, is not a good development for us long term. But, you know, this goodwill, I think the IDA do a very good job of exploiting that. For example, German companies will say to me, where is your apprentice system? How can you expect a graduate engineer to look after your equipment? And I know that you come 23 months in, but many organizations don't think that they wherewithal to invest 23 further months in a graduate. So I'd just come back to the apprentice system. I'd love to see far more investment in those. Not everyone is cut out for college anymore, and we do need people who will with their hands.
So it's been track and balance approach. Our last question maybe, and following on in the balance of flipping the FDI question over, what do we need to do now, you know, to develop our own indigenous manufacturing sector, not relying solely on FDI, supporting and supply into that, but to grow our own indigenous companies, to start them and in fact grow and nurture them, to become large players and to potentially at some stage export. And you know that you're involved in the entrepreneurs organisation, so obviously that startup culture is important to you. What can we do in Ireland to help grow more indigenous Irish manufacturing firms?
I think from a business point of view, and if we take up a level and go to business first, I think there's a great effort right now, and you know, it's easy to throw stones, but there's a lot of help and a lot of state support there for business. If you have a good product, if you have a value system, etc., or if you have something that you can bring to a plant. There are challenges, and it's been quite challenging over the last 5 years, especially to grow any organisation. But I guess the challenges, particularly around our banking system, I suppose the environment we came up with, that taking risk now is somewhat seen as not necessarily a good thing. The people that go out there and that grow business, Sean, are brave people. They create jobs. They should be supported in a way that the state could, I suppose, win on their behalf as well. There are things that certainly from an entrepreneurial level and from a business level or even a manufacturing level, that if business owners can see that they can get a return in the future for the effort, and perhaps maybe the high level of effort and maybe the expense they go through, not only from a fiscal point of view but life point of view as well, the journey that they put themselves and the family upon, that if they can get a reward for that and that is there for them in the end, I think that would be a nice environment that would allow more people to consider business as an alternative. And I guess if you take it as well, we have an attitude, I guess, again in Ireland a little bit that failure is a bad thing. Well, from an engineering point of view, failure is the most excellent thing. I had the wonderful opportunity to go and see Chris Hadfield, the guy that was in space last Sunday, and he talked about failure in his training, and they kept trying to fail because it was in failing they learned how to do it right. And so from an entrepreneurial point of view, a business point of view, we've kind of got to support business to go out there and fail fast and learn, and then from that they can go and perhaps create the jobs then create the jobs that we don't have. It's great having this wonderful FDI culture, they're wonderful to have them in, but the true great job is the job built by an Irish company, the ones that I love to take my hats off. And there are a lot here today that weren't here 20 years ago, so that's my tuppence for this workshop.
Thank you. Does anybody, as a last comment, want to address what they think we could be doing in Ireland to grow more Indigenous Irish and particularly Indigenous Irish manufacturing firms?
I have to plug standards, obviously, being a director of standards for GS1. I think everybody recognises that supply chain in the future is going to involve a lot more collaboration and globalisation. There's a contradiction where there's also a lot of localisation. Consumers are now looking for local products, but there is a huge amount of globalisation. For that to happen, Irish companies are going to have to deal a lot more with international companies, whether it's their customers or their suppliers. And I think for them to make it efficient, both on sharing data and sharing information on products, they're going to have to look at the technologies that are available and not have a plethora of proprietary systems trying to get various systems to talk. And that's my plug for today.
And so I suppose that's a good way to bring it to an end, to say that it is about collaboration. It's about collaboration between Indigenous Irish business and FDI. It's about collaboration between universities and industry, and I guess together we're definitely better and stronger. So as Ryan Tubridy would say, stay where you are until, sorry Liam, you want final, I'll give you the final line. Yes. Does anyone have a question that they would like to address to the panel when you have them here captive at the end of the day? Is there any piece of information you'd like to squeeze out of them before we let them go? Yes, we have two. And you might rub a microphone. I recognise the first gentleman, a well-dressed Mr. Mark McLean.
Thank you, gentlemen. My name is Mark McLean. Great discussion around innovation, lean, collaboration. Collaboration came out a lot. I'm just wondering, we talk about it a lot, specifically around the life science sector. Collaboration seems to be stalling slightly. Is there anything that Ireland can do? Is there anything we can do in Ireland in the life science sector to drive collaboration? And I suppose the second question is, could Ireland take the lead in collaboration? Is it something that Ireland could own and drive?
Who would like to take that question? Go for it.
I won't answer that, it's my business partner, so he'll only think I'm allowed to go.
Yeah, that would sound like a plan. Liam, do you want to address that, the collaboration thing?
Sorry, I didn't fully understand the question. What sort of collaboration are you talking about?
So, I suppose if I look at the life science sector, so we hear
In the lifestyle sector.
life science. So
Life science.
yeah, we hear
Science.
companies like Procter and Gamble that are going out and collaborating with the public. I'm just thinking, looking at companies like pharmaceutical, biopharmaceutical, medical device companies in manufacturing, are we really utilising the collaboration that we could to develop manufacturing in that space?
It strikes me there's a lot of collaboration within your sector. There's been a lot of mergers, some huge ones. So there's something going on there. Am I happy about it? I don't know. I think the bigger somebody gets, the bigger the impact of something happens. So, at a more basic level, just as an basic operations guy, as I grew up, I used to help set up networks with my workforce, with mechanical engineers, with engineers, with production planners, with logisticians, with supply chain people, and we tried to set it up within the area so that people could collaborate easily without leaving their home, or leaving their hometown, or travelling overseas. And in that way, they would build their skills very naturally and very cheaply, if you like, without spending a lot of money. But I suspect we're talking about something at another level, and I'm not really sure about it.
Anybody else want to take that question? Dennis, you
I mean, collaboration, I mean, just two things come to mind. One is if you look at all the financial incentives that both the state and the European Union are developing and have developed in recent years for innovation, research and innovation, they're virtually all involve collaboration. Some of the older type incentives like straight grants are still there, but you know, Science Foundation Ireland, very much all that funding is collaboration based, Horizon 2020. So it's there, and it's a matter of people going out and embracing, what's available. And the other, obviously, big revolution that's impacting and going to impact us is the whole Internet of Things and the digitalization. And that almost, in many cases, requires collaboration, because nobody can develop these new devices on their own. It's a crossover between ICT and health, or ICT and food, or engineering. So that's the way the world is, and that's the way the world is going to go. I think Ireland, again, we're in a good position, and I think we are good collaborators. We're good people, and I don't see any reason why we can't be as good, if not better, than anybody else at it.
Great, thank you very much. You want to make a comment there, Dennis?
Just briefly, I think almost everybody here would agree that collaboration is a good thing and desirable, but many have collaboration as part of their strategy, where they may have a budget or they may have time allotted for staff to attend meetings. In our own background for developing standards, we don't sit in an office and develop the standards on our own. We ask industry to engage, so they will come along and bring their experience and bring their requirements. But it's very difficult to get the industry to engage, because they don't have the time allotted and they don't have the budget for travel or time allowed for conference calls. That's a form of collaboration. No, not one company I speak to would deny that they would like to collaborate or that they would benefit from collaborating, but they don't allocate the resources to do it. That would apply on several levels.
Great, thanks, Dennis. We have one last final question there. Thank you for your perseverance.
My name's Andy Lynan, I work for Rockwell Automation. And,
From which, you say that again?
Rockwell Automation. We provide automation systems into manufacturing in Ireland.
Good. I want to make sure you get the plug in. Never ask a question without getting a plug in.
Ask me again at the end. No, I guess the question was, it's seldom you go through a discussion on manufacturing without the Internet of Things being mentioned at the end there, but a lot of the discussions seem to be about resources and skill sets, but for manufacturing in Ireland, should not be very threatened by, if you read any of these futurists now, they talk about how there's going to be a loss of jobs based on higher degrees of automation and robotics taking over. So should we be threatened by higher levels of automation?
I'll throw that to Ronan first, because you're in HR. So are you going to be made redundant? Are you going to make all your staff redundant? What's the future?
The answer is no. No, I think it's a valid point, actually. If you look at Boston Scientific, actually, I think there's a fine line. So if we look at the strategy of Boston Scientific, one of the things that we're looking at in terms of our strategy is how we automate more within our manufacturing process. But to a point, actually. So when we look at the product that Boston Scientific makes, one of the things that really strikes people when they come in and see our manufacturing process is how much manual dexterity is involved in actually making that process. And it's highly skilled people, highly skilled product builders. Working on the line. So I think that automation is a good thing. Actually, I think we need to invest more in state-of-the-art technology that actually makes us more efficient. But I don't think we will get to a stage with the Internet of Things whereby machines are going to completely take over and that people will be made redundant. I think we talked about the collaboration skills, we talked about the teamwork skills, we talked about more of the softer skills, and those are skills that we know are required in order to leverage us for the next few years, and they are things that machines will never be able to do. So I think it needs to find mix between
Do any of the panel have an opinion on whether or not automation, the Internet of Things, and others will not necessarily do away with jobs, but will change the nature of work as we know it and what people will be doing in
Yeah, I suppose when we were talking, there was a gentleman up here before we came up, he was from IBM, isn't it? And I think it was the head of IBM that said in the 60s or something like that, there would be 5 computers. There would be one in every continent all over the world, you know, kind of robots that do whatever, etc. Well, I mean, 20 years ago, I'm from Galway, so I'm in Boston. Well, you know, the technology that 20 years ago when I was just joining HP, you know, the jobs that are there today are completely different than the jobs that were back then. And I remember digital going, and the end was nigh in Galway. Well, Galway innovated it. It was flexible. It moved on. It upskilled. It's brought what was called good humanistic skills, etc., and moved into different areas. And I think we have to be cognizant of being constantly value-led ourselves, so that we can be flexible enough to take those and you know, lead the automation revolution. I mean, embrace the Internet of Things. There's some wonderful stuff going on with regards to it. And so I think Ireland is a prime example of a country that has, for the last 40 years, come from low-end manufacturing to very, very now high-end manufacturing. And I think we can go, one thing I think we don't do enough of is leading. And I think we could be out there. There's no reason why my clients of wonderful American companies, but it doesn't have to be always the United States. It can be Ireland too. So we can lead that, and you know, and that's, I think, the nature of jobs, long-term jobs. I mean, they're going to be 40 years in a place. I think that day is probably coming to an end. But I think that jobs will be different, and people will get value. It's like, I suppose, buying a car, or will you just take an Uber ride all over the place in 5-10 years' time?
Yes, because it reminds me when I was speaking to a school recently, and I was explaining that to young kids that 20 years ago, mobile phones and the internet didn't exist for most of us, and yet look at the thousands and hundreds of thousands of jobs in the sector, but also has changed. And then in many ways, in the next 20 years, most of these students who are leaving college now will be working in jobs not yet developed, and probably in industries not even yet conceived. So it's certainly going to be no reason why, as we say, Ireland couldn't lead the race. We're going to wrap it up there. I think we're done now. If I just ask the panel to stay with me for a second and we'll roll the credits. I want to thank you personally, those you who have stayed, for your patience and your perseverance. We've had a lot of good debate, a lot of great presentations, a lot of information, a lot of insights into manufacturing across different sectors, Irish and international. We've heard people from different walks of life and from different sectors. I have to say it's been an incredibly enjoyable, information-packed day. It's been a great success to think that 3 years ago when we held the event we had just over 200, last year 600, this year over 2,000. I want to thank all our speakers, all 125 of them between the main stage today and also in the workshops, the 8 workshops. I want to thank the 120 exhibitors who came and exhibited their skills and technology and their services to support the manufacturing sector in terms of efficiency and greater competitiveness. I want to acknowledge the sponsors, GS1 and Deloitte, who are supporting the event, and all the sponsors. And a special word of thanks, obviously, to Colin Murphy and the organisers for having the courage and bravery to put on an event that has grown and been so well supported. I think it's not many years ago since we heard the mantra that manufacturing in Ireland was dead. I think we can see that manufacturing in Ireland is far from dead. And finally, to you, the delegates who have attended and given great attention to all the speakers, I hope you got something out of today. I hope that you made some contacts with your peers, that you learned and made some contacts with the exhibitors, and that you're going away more confident and more informed. And I know that next year there's an added benefit to the conference in that there will be the awards, Manufacturing and Supply Chain Awards. So that's something that you'll be hearing from the organisers about. So to our final panel, to Aidan, Liam, Dennis, Ronan and Dennis, can I thank them very much, give them a round of applause, and thank you very much for your attention. And stay cold.